Okay, and looks like that started, and I'm going to hand it over now to Shannon. So let me stop sharing my screen. Okay.
Thank you so much, Priscilla. Hi, everyone. I do need to give everybody a heads up. The responsiveness of my machine right now is very slow, and it's making me nervous. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. But if I have any issues, please do let me know. Okay, and let me just get myself situated here so that I can see the comments as I present. And then we'll get started. Maybe. I see a lot of familiar faces in the attendee list, so thank you so much for joining. As I present, if people have questions or comments, as Priscilla mentioned, please feel free to unmute yourself and ask. I will try to leave some room for Q&A at the end as well. So feel free to ask your question at any time. I will mention that I am sure I do not know all of the answers. So with that being said, if there is something I do not know, I will definitely look it up and get back to you. And I'll work with Priscilla to figure out how we'll share that. Maybe we'll share it through the comments in the meetup group or something. And if you can, if anyone is watching and has access to the meeting chat, if you wouldn't mind just copying and pasting that presentation link in again, that would be awesome. Just so everybody who just joined has access to it. Oh, I see lots of familiar faces in the participant panel. So it's nice to have you guys. Let's go ahead and get started. Thank you so much. Oh, thanks, Kevin. Thank you so much to everyone for joining. Thanks, Priscilla, for organizing and for having me. It is really nice to have this community break in the middle of the day. Community work is so energizing to me, and I really enjoy it and appreciate being here and chatting with you guys. So please, let's make this as interactive as possible. The first thing that I want to do is to see, just out of all of the people here, how many people have, or I guess the question is, how many people hold a professional certification, whether that's like a tech certification or a project management certification or any of them under the sun? Can you use the little hand icon up at the top of the Teams meeting and raise your hand if you already hold some kind of a certification? Wow, quite a few people, over a third. Okay, so I think now you have to actually bring your hand down. I think that's the way the controls work. But so what I want to emphasize here is that this presentation, of course, I'm going to tell you what I know from my perspective, but I want to make sure that if you have something to add that I have not put out there, please add your comments in the chat. If you have links to share, I would encourage you to share those, and we'll make sure that we can get everything all into one place and share them with folks at the end. So I want this to be not only a presentation, but also kind of us crowdsourcing our ideas. I feel like just the community helping each other is a really big deal when it comes to certifications. They can be really intimidating. So I do want to make sure that we are helping each other. Okay, so let's jump in. My computer has a spinning wheel. Okay, great. All right, so who am I? Just a little bit about myself. Priscilla already mentioned to you that if working at Microsoft does not work out for me, I'm going to run away and join the circus. That is my latest hobby, and it is really super fun. Hopefully, once we're all vaccinated, I can get back to it. My background is in public health analytics, and I caught the Power BI bug about 5 years ago when I was working at a public health nonprofit with a colleague of mine, Stephanie Bruno. And once I caught the bug, I really was all in. It changed my whole career. I was I went from, doing a whole lot of manual transformation of data to actually using Power Query to transform my data and then having time to do the actual analysis. So Power BI has truly changed my life. When I say that, I can't emphasize that enough. Sorry, bear with me. I'm just trying to figure out my screens here. I want to make sure I can see the chat. Perfect. Okay. All right, Kevin, yeah, you have a good point. If there are folks that have their video on, if you wouldn't mind turning that off, that would be great. I think the problem is multifaceted. I think it's my bandwidth plus my machine plus team. So let's do everything we can to make it better. Thank you. All right, so what are we going to talk about here today? We are going to cover the benefits of certification. So we are going to talk about the why. We're going to talk about what certifications are even out there, and then how to get and stay certified. So I want to make sure that you have all of the resources at hand. Before we jump into the actual meat of the presentation, I do want to point out that Microsoft has this really nice poster that goes over the whole landscape of certifications. And I will drop this link in the chat again. But if you're wondering, like, what are these Microsoft certifications? What are all the paths that I can take? What is related to data? What's going to help me in my career? Yada, yada, yada. This is the place to go. So what we're going to talk about here today actually fits into two areas. So Power BI is such an amazing product that it lives in two spaces. It lives in the Power Platform space, and it also lives in the data platform space under AI. So we're going to talk a little bit about both the leftmost and the rightmost column of this visual. Thanks for sharing that, David. But I did want to just point this out. I find this helpful, particularly if you're trying to help your colleagues figure out what it is that they want to take. Okay, so why should you get certified? What I'd like to know from you all is if people want to drop any reasons why you yourself got certified. For those 10 or so of you that raised your hands earlier, if you want to drop the reason why you got certified in the chat, I feel like that would be helpful just for other people to see so that my opinion isn't the only one. But the first thing I want to mention from my side is that this is not a sales pitch. I'm taking off my working at Microsoft hat and I'm putting on just my community hat. This isn't a sales pitch. Certification truly helped me with my career. It helped me pivot from working solely in public health to working as a consultant in the data and AI space. And I just want to share with you how you can do it. And it looks like, other folks did it for themselves and for their careers. So I'm in the same boat. I did it really to prove to myself that I could, and then it helped my career as well. So in the grand scheme of things, experience is great. And we all know that we have it and you can demonstrate it on your CV, but how do you really demonstrate your knowledge and your skills to employers and colleagues? And that really is with certification. Of all the people on the line, I'm not sure how many people have recently tried to hire people, particularly in the data and AI space. And I can tell you from the hiring perspective that seeing certifications on people's resumes is really useful from the hiring side. So there's that as well. All right, so there is a survey and it's 3 years old at this point, 3 years old at this point. There was a 2018 Pearson VUE survey that was done of 10,000 IT professionals from 138 countries. And they essentially highlighted what they thought were the benefits of being certified. So one that I really like, and this is really relevant to me, particularly because just of who I am and what my background is, becoming certified really helped me know that I know this technology. I gained a lot of confidence after passing that first exam. So hopefully that will become the case for you as well. There are loads of other benefits that you may find, one of which is really tangible, particularly right now, and that is in your salary or wage increase. When I switched roles, I increased my salary more than I really could have thought that I would, moving from public health into essentially IT. So if anybody wants to talk about that or wants to drop a question in the chat, please feel free. I'm not going to go through all of these bullet points, but I just want to, point out some of the benefits of certification. Related to the salary and wage increase, I just wanted to drop in a little graphic that shows the percent of salary increase of all of the respondents. I thought this was kind of enlightening. I'm not really sure who these 5% are up here that got a 50% increase. Good for them. That's remarkable. But it looks like the majority of respondents are down here in the 6 to 10% range. All right, now this slide is a lot. I don't want anyone to, you don't need to go through and read this line by line, but this slide is related to the data and AI specific certifications that exist at Microsoft. So what we're going to do is we're going to look at the data and AI certifications, and then we're also going to look at the Power Platform certifications, and then we're going to talk about the paths to get there. So the first thing that I want us to understand is what are your options for getting certified? And there are many, and I can tell you from experience that it can be really confusing when you start to look at it. If you've been around in the Microsoft ecosystem for a while, you may know that for a lot of the different certifications, there used to be multiple exams that led to one certification. Things are changing a bit now. You still see that in some instances, but for the most part now we're looking at kind of a one-to-one match between exam and certification, which is really nice. The other shift is that the certifications have all really become role-based, both in the data and AI portfolio and in the Power Platform portfolio. So really in the data and AI certification portfolio, we are looking at kind of 4 main roles. We're looking at data analyst, we're looking at database administrator, we're looking at data engineer, and we're looking at data scientist. So if you are considering which certification is right for you, or potentially one of your colleagues or someone that reports to you, this is a good place to start, is to think about your role. Now, I'm actually going to jump over, speaking of roles, I'm going to jump to the Power Platform certifications, because these are role-based as well. But the roles are slightly different. So we're moving a little bit away from the data space, and we're moving more towards the kind of app maker space. So in the Power Platform world, we have the app maker associate and the functional consultant. These are the 2 kind of gateways into the higher level certs. And one thing that I do want to point out is that in the Power Platform certifications, there is a Power BI element in each of these exams, particularly the PL 100 and PL 200. Maggie, hi. Maggie asked if the numbers correspond to technical level, and the answer is yes, they do. So on the whole, what we see is that the 900 level certifications are the fundamentals, and you'll see fundamentals exams across the whole certification portfolio. And I'm just going to jump back. Sorry, my computer is being slow. I have no clue what you guys can see right now. Okay, so for the fundamentals exams, we have a bunch of them. So we have Power Platform, we have Dynamics, we have Microsoft 365, and Azure. And the fundamentals are really entry level. The courses are not a lot of hands-on lab material. It's more, do you understand the general concepts? So if you are just starting out, this is a great place to be, is the fundamentals. The courses for these that Microsoft provides are 1-day courses. So it's not a ton of information, but it's what you need to know to get started with the technology. Then when you start to get up into the numbers of the exam, your 100 levels are going to be like your base associate level exams, and then the skill level increases from there. I hope that answers your question, Maggie. And to be totally frank with everyone, I am still very new to the official Microsoft side of all of this. So if anybody has any sort of a better response, feel free to drop it in the chat at any time. Okay, so going back to these data and AI certifications, one thing that I wanted to do is just to walk us through a little bit what it looks like when you are trying to take these exams, and like, how do you navigate this system? Because I can tell you it is confusing. So let's do this together, and we're going to jump in to the DA 100, the Data Analyst Associate. And this is really the main exam that we're going to be talking about today. This is a Power BI user group. I think a lot of folks on the line come from the Power BI experience. If you don't, that is completely okay. It's going to be similar for all of the exams, but I just want to show everyone kind of what to expect. And then we're going to go through the how and the how to stay certified after this. But I'm just going to jump to this link here, and this takes us into the Microsoft Learning environment. And what you'll see here is you're always going to see the latest time that the exam was updated. And any time that the exam is updated, if you scroll down in the page here, you're going to see this skills measured section. And in the skills measured section, you can download the exam skills outline. Now, this is really critical for those of you that are studying for the exam. And let's go ahead and download it and just take a look at it. And what you can see here is that each of the sections of the skills measured list individual skills that you want to make sure that you know and that you understand. Now, we're going to talk about different ways to learn these after this slide, but essentially, when I was studying for the DA 100, and I know there are many people on the line who have either just taken it or who are about to take it. When I was studying for the DA 100, what I did was I took each of these bullet points and I made sure that I could either do them in Power BI, so whether that was in desktop or the service or wherever it was that I needed to be, or that I knew enough about them to be able to teach someone else. That was how I kind of measured if I actually knew the content. Now, for DA 100, I will just mention that it's a pretty broad exam. It covers the whole entire Power BI product. And that is all the way from getting and transforming data through administration and governance. So if you are going through this outline and you're like, holy moly, that's a lot of individual topics to know about, it is. You're not wrong. It's a lot of topics to know about. And I think you'll see if, excuse me, if you're looking through the different exams and you're trying to figure out what it is that you want to focus on, take a look at these skills outlines, understand which skills you maybe want to gain or which skills you already have, and that may help you make your decision on which exam you're actually going to take. All right, and going back, I do want to scroll down just a little bit more onto this exam page, and let me drop this link into the chat as well, just in case anyone is curious. And Raina is asking, for the beginner level, how much time is sufficient to prepare for the DA 100? And Raina, I'm going to come back to you with a question. You can unmute yourself or drop it in the chat, whatever you prefer. But what does beginner level mean to you? Have you used Power BI before? Okay, perfect. All right, so if you have hands-on experience with Power BI, and this is just my opinion, so I'd love for other people to drop your opinion in the chat. But if you have hands-on experience using Power BI, I would say that you should set aside between 20 and 40 hours of study time. And yes, Kevin is adding here in the chat that he would suggest that you start with the self-guided study, and we're going to look at that right now. So if you come to this DA100 certification page that I dropped into the chat, the best way to get started is right here. Okay, so these are the learning paths that exist to help you learn the skills to be able to pass the exam. So this content has been curated by the team at Microsoft to make sure that you gain the skills you need to pass the exam. So what each of these learning paths contains is within each learning path, there are different modules. And within each of the modules, there are different sections where it'll take you through, like, for example, the tasks of a data analyst. It'll take you through the different subject topics, English. It'll take you through the different topics. And then at the end of each module, there are little quiz questions. I can honestly say that I think these quiz questions, while they may look simplistic at face value, they are helpful. If you click on the wrong answer, you will get a reason as to why they are the wrong answers. So let me just pick some wrong answers here. So here you can see the red font is burning my eyeballs a little bit, but here you can see that you get the reasoning to why the answer is what it is. And I find this really particularly helpful. All right, so this is, let's go back here a couple of steps. So again, what I wanted to just mention is if you are considering a certification, the best place to start is to figure out which certification it is that you want to take. So looking at the data and AI certifications here, you know, if you decide that maybe an analyst is not your role, perhaps you are more of an engineer, you're going to want to go to the data engineering page. This is the best place to start. The first thing you're going to want to do is scroll through, look at the skills measured, download the skills outline, and then start going through the learning path. Oh, one thing that I did not mention related to the learning paths is that for the data analyst role-based certification, there are labs that are included in this learn content. So what it does is it launches a virtual machine, it takes you onto that virtual machine, and it provides labs where you go through each of the skills that are listed in the skills outline. Now, I can say that it is difficult to cover all of that content in the hands-on lab, so there may be some contents that aren't covered. However, if you do not have a Power BI desktop, if you do not have a PC, this is a really good place to start because you can just play around on the virtual machine and play with Power BI. So I would highly recommend those labs if you get a chance. You can also do the labs on your own. The labs and their instructions are published on GitHub, and I will share that in the chat as well. But I would recommend doing it on the VM. It's a really kind of easy way to do it all within the Learn environment, and you never have to leave that. Let's jump back to the presentation here. So does anyone have any questions about the data and AI certifications? Is it clear kind of which role you fit into? Do we have any data scientists on the line?
Hi there, this is Kevin here.
Hey, Kevin, go ahead.
Hi, so I just wanted to ask, apart from the online learn, you know, the topics, is there anything that we could do, like, you know, for preparing for the exam, because there are typically these multiple choice questions, isn't it?
Yes. Okay, so let me jump ahead a few slides to answer your question, and then we'll come back to that. That's a great question.
Sure, no worries. Yeah, thanks. Bye.
Yeah, of course. So the question is how? How do you get certified? Okay, so the first thing we just did when looking through the different certifications was that we identified our target role. That is always where you have to start. Because if you just go to the Learn content and you put in Azure, hundreds of modules are going to show up and it's going to be a little bit confusing of, like what you should select. So identify your target role, figure out what you have expertise in or what you want to have expertise in. That's where I always start. Okay. And then use those learning paths. That is a great place to start. One thing that the learning paths will help you do is understand, like, okay, this information is good, but for me, for my own understanding, it's not deep enough. It doesn't help me really understand all I need to know about that topic. And then your next step is going to be looking at the documentation. And that's just the docs.microsoft.com. We actually have some of the documentation team members on the line. So start with the Learn content, then go to the documentation. Then the next thing that I would highly recommend is to take a look at the community resources. This one is huge. The first thing that I will mention in relation to the DA 100 exam is go to Priscilla's website. At the end of January, Priscilla published an amazing blog post about how to prepare for the DA 100. And I think you could really honestly use that as a guide before you start preparing, because Priscilla goes over everything. She talks about the exam questions itself. She talks about the environment. She talks about keys to success, like using practice exams, using a study group, all of that. So if you go to itdatadiva.com, you will find that there. And Corey is mentioning that he used the edX course and he loved it. Okay, great, Corey. So the edX course, I wonder if it's still out there. Corey, do you know is that one still up? I'm assuming it might be. There are also great courses on Coursera. So you've got the MOOC courses that are free and online and available, and they're really good quality. You also have other courses that you may have to pay for. But honestly, I can say, coming from my nonprofit background, there are enough free resources out there in this community to help you succeed. I don't actually think anyone needs to pay for the exams. Pamela, the MOOC courses, does anybody know what it stands for? It's Mass Open something course. They are the online courses that are usually, thank you, Garrett, massive online open course. Thanks, Jay. Yes. I'm showing all the things I don't know on this stream, which is great. But so those online open courses are free and they have like university level content and they are great. So if you just, search for Power BI, MOOC, a bunch of them will come up. And one of them will probably be the edX course. Another might be Coursera. There are also courses on LinkedIn. And then one other resource that I wanted to share with you is a website called learndatainsights.com. A friend of ours, Rishi Sapra, going to Learn Data Insights. Created this learndatainsights.com website. It's completely free. You do have to create a username and a password, but the reason for that is because he then tracks the quality of the questions on his site. So if you are taking questions, he marks, he captures a bunch of metrics about the test question. So that's a really great one. Then there are also practice exams that you can pay for that they partner with Microsoft. And so the exam questions look very, very similar to what the real exam questions look like. Now, I do think that that's a good option, particularly if you don't feel like you're a great test taker or you have anxieties about taking exams and you really want to see the questions as they will appear. In that case, I would recommend the paid content, and Priscilla has a link to one of those in her blog post. But I can honestly say I do not think you need to pay any money to be able to pass this exam. I think you can do it for free with the support of the community. I do want to take a pause right now just to note that I don't want to mispronounce your name. So the person who recommended that we start a virtual study group, do you want to come off mute and just introduce yourself?
Yeah, sure. Hi, this is Sajjad. I work for data science team of Wabash National. We are a semi-trailer manufacturing company. I do teach part-time at Purdue also. I teach people analytics, and I'm planning to take that exam next month. So I was just wondering, because of the COVID and new normal, maybe a virtual online study group might help. So I suggested that.
I think that is a brilliant idea. Brilliant.
Yep. So
Does
yeah.
anyone else have any thoughts?
So I mean,
sorry, I cut you off.
So previously I took other certification exams, and due to COVID and everything going on, I used resources like Facebook or Meetup. We just created a group, even WhatsApp, and it worked well for me. But I don't know about other people. That like it depends on the personality type also. Yeah.
Yeah, that is a great suggestion. I personally find that the accountability that comes with, well, number one, for me, it's accountability that comes with working with a larger group. And number two, sometimes when you're learning material, or particularly if you don't use this every day in your normal job, it's nice to be able to talk to people about it and to talk through different concepts and even to talk about ways that you may be able to practically implement it. So I think the idea of a study group is a fantastic idea. I know, Priscilla, you had some success with a study group. Is that right?
That is right, I did, and it was very, very helpful. So I definitely recommend it. I know in the Power BI Women group, they also had a study group as well, and I believe that went very well too. So yes, I definitely recommend that.
Awesome, thanks. Maggie, Learn Data Insights is completely free. There is no cost associated with it. It's a community resource. You do have to put in your information, which can be nerve-wracking. I don't like doing that on websites, but if you go to the quiz questions, the reason you put in your information is because once you go to the questions, they do all of this tracking for how the questions are and how people do and all that stuff. And if you're curious to learn more, Maggie, I can link you up with Rishi, the guy who started the website. And it looks like Supreet is asking for a link for a study group. I am not personally aware of any study groups that exist at the moment, but if anybody is aware of them, if you could drop them into the chat. This may also be a good point to mention when we're talking about community resources. This is going to sound silly, but if you are not on Twitter or LinkedIn, do yourself a favor, create an account, follow the Microsoft certifications page, follow the, hashtag DA100, the hashtag Power BI, follow Power BI, follow the Power Platform. There is always information coming out every day. That is where I learned about the Power BI Women study group. So do yourself a favor, hop on Twitter, follow Priscilla, and once you follow her, you'll be linked up to all the right people and the right things, and you'll start seeing the Power BI information in your feed. Okay, so speaking of, the specifics of the exam, I want to talk about the exam format itself. So for the exam itself, there are 58 questions total that you do in 3 hours, and it is a passing score of 70%. You get you get your score on the exam the minute that you click submit. So it is both fantastic and also nerve-wracking all at once. But right now during COVID, it's completely computer-based. Well, it's always completely computer-based. Right now, I believe it's completely remote. Depending on where you are in the world, you may have testing centers open. And one important thing to note is that you cannot have anything on your desk and you cannot write anything down. I took the exam right here in this office, and what I had to do was I had to put sheets over my bookshelves. And then you have to like spin your computer around to show them like your desk and there can't be windows or anything like that. It's really to protect the integrity of the exam because these certifications are really valuable, but it can be really difficult. So if you have the opportunity to do it in a testing center, that may be lower stress. And in a testing center, you get a physical whiteboard where you can write things down on. I am both a visual learner and I'm auditory. So I like to when I'm reading a question, I speak aloud. That is not allowed. You're not allowed to do that. So there are some serious limitations, and I know Priscilla talked about some of this in her blog. There are some serious limitations that you have to consider when you're thinking about whether or not this is the right option for you, just because this kind of testing doesn't accommodate everyone's learning style. And we're continuing to look into that and to work on it. There are multiple choice questions. There are sequence questions. So, put things in sequence, what comes first, second, third, fourth. There are drag and drop questions where you have like a pool of answers and you drop them into a sentence. There are multi-select questions. And then there are also these case studies. In my experience, I found the case studies to be the most difficult, but it is actually really cool because it does test, would this person be able to use this in this scenario? So the case studies are nice, but I do find them a little bit more challenging. Does anyone have anything to mention about taking the exam or the format of the test, the question types? Feel free to take yourself off mute or drop it in the chat. I know we have some folks on the line that are taking the exam very soon. So I'd love to hear from you if you've done this recently, what your hot tips are for taking the exam.
Well, I have a tip. I definitely recommend being comfortable and having a good environment and making sure that you've eaten a bit, not too much, but enough to keep you good. So that's mine. Does anyone else have any tips?
So, hi.
Sorry, go ahead.
I want to know something. So, did anybody take the online version of the exam? So, how do they proctor it? What should be I careful about? Yeah, I'm just curious. I already scheduled the exam and I will take it last week of next month. So, just wondering how that online platform works.
Yeah, okay, good question. All right, so I'm going to answer this question, then I'm going to go to Malcolm's question in the chat. Hi, Malcolm. And then Maggie's question. So the question about the online exam and how does it work? When you take the exam, you log into it through a browser, and when you log in, it opens up a web browser for the testing site itself. You then have to close your other browser window, and they monitor your desktop and they watch you on camera. So on your computer, you cannot have any other applications open. And what's really important is that if you have like Teams or Skype or Slack or any of those things, you have to make sure that you kill them completely so that they don't pop up, because that will interrupt your exam and they could potentially stop your exam for something like that. The moderators do pay attention to you, and what they look for is movement, and then they also are listening. I'm pointing to my mouth. They're listening. So when I was reading questions aloud, they would come on and they would say, "I'm sorry, ma'am, but you cannot do that. This is your warning. Please don't do it again." That kind of a thing. So then what you get taken into is in that testing environment, you're able to page through all of the different questions. So there are like left and right arrows and all that jazz. And then you have the ability to flag questions for review, which I really, really like. The only questions you cannot come back to are the case studies. Okay, so now we're going to get into your question, Malcolm. So as you're going through the questions, the case studies are presented on their own, and they'll give you a case study. And what they'll do is they'll say, company X, Y, and Z is experiencing this. They want to set up, they want to start using Power BI. They have these data sources, X, Y, and Z, and they want to use Power BI. This is how they want to distribute it. And then you'll get like 4 different questions related to that case study. And within the case study, there may be images, like you may see what their underlying data structure looks like. You may see what the schema is of the tables that they're using. And within those like 4 questions, you can toggle around between, the background information, the images, and the question. But that question is like in its own unique little environment. So once you do the case study question, those are the only ones you cannot come back to. And one other thing to mention about those case study questions, if you do opt to do one of the paid providers for the exam questions, and one of those is listed in Priscilla's blog, and then there's another one that's listed on the Microsoft page. The paid providers do have the case studies in the exact same format. So just FYI, I hope that answers both of your questions. To Maggie's question, so the question was about, can you have a cup of tea? I actually took an exam recently, and Melissa, I'm not sure when the last time you took yours was. I took mine probably 2 months ago, and I was allowed to have this water cup. So I was allowed to have water, but no tissues. And that was new because the last exam I took, I was not allowed to have water. So it's really interesting. I drink a lot of water in a 3-hour time period normally.
So Shannon, what is is there any break time between the exam, or can you take a break, or you have to take it?
That's a good question. I believe the answer is no. I'd love to hear from Melissa. She just took an exam. I'd love to hear from other people on the line. I see Stephanie's on here. Hi, Steph. So the restrictions are pretty stringent. So you cannot get up, I don't think. And there is someone watching you. So I believe if you're at a testing center, you might be able to get up. I'm not totally sure. But if you take the online exam, you cannot get up. You cannot be interrupted by your kids. You cannot. There are a lot of restrictions. So just be careful. And as long as you know that ahead of time, it's not so bad. But I think, like Stephanie mentioned up above, she had to change things at the last minute, and I feel like that can be really stressful. So if you are taking the online exam, what they do is they give you a link to test your system prior to the exam. And in that test, they have you like set up your computer with the computer you're going to be using. And then they have you take pictures of the full room. I would just plan on using the same setup for your test as you do for I can't say test again. Use the same setup for the pre-test thing and your actual exam, and that'll help you. I'm just reading through the notes in the chat. One thing I want to mention just in general, as both a member of the data community and also now working at Microsoft, we are aware that there are some issues with the way that the tests are run. Like I mentioned before, it does not suit everyone's learning or testing style. It's not necessarily accessible for everyone, and that's a problem. There are reasons for it, but I don't know any of the details behind it, but I mean, realistically, these exams mean something, and they want to make sure that there is no cheating happening. That's what it is behind it. Melissa, did you have something to add?
Oh, no, sorry, I should have stayed muted.
No, no.
Yeah, I found that the taking of the test was pretty stressful for me compared to, and not so much the questions, although the questions were stressful because I felt that when I took the test, that of the 38 questions or 35 questions, there were 22 that I marked for review. So to me, it was a kind of a hard test. But I also felt that all of the restrictions for the exam were pretty like stringent. And I needed to log on a half hour before, and it literally took me like the whole half hour to get my setup ready. And I already thought that I had it ready. But I took down the monitors, I made sure the room was clear, but that they still found things that they would have been concerned about. And
Yeah.
I even went as far as to make sure that my hair was down so it looked like my license, just, trying to make it as easy as I could to get through that part of it.
Yes. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
I completely agree with you. You have to wait for the proctor to come onto the screen, and sometimes they come right in and sometimes they don't, and it just takes it's very time consuming. Set aside a half of a day because you'll also be stressed after you take it, regardless of whether or not you pass. Maggie asks, how do you find a room with no windows? So if the windows are covered, it's okay. So I have blinds on the window in my office. That was fine. I also just use sheets and blankets to cover stuff. That works too. It's a little bit silly. That's all I have to say about that. David asked if there is info on pass and fail rates. And yes, David, I do have access to that information and I can share it. I don't have it at my fingertips, but I believe that the pass rate for DA 100 is actually pretty high. It's above 80% from what I remember. Don't quote me on that though. I will get back to you with that. But yes, we do have that info. And I'll find it. I'll dig it up. I actually have to jump in 2 minutes, but I wanted to just mention quickly that there is a new initiative that Microsoft recently rolled out. They announced it in December, and it is throughout the year, it's going to be rolling out to all of the certifications, and that is how to stay certified. So in the past, the certifications, well, the old certifications some of them had no expiration date on them. And then the latest version of the certifications had a 2-year expiration date. The current certifications moving forward will all be valid for a period of 1 year. From there, you will be able to renew your certification at no cost, completely for free, and it will be in the Learn environment, so the learn.microsoft.com. So Microsoft is intentionally making it easier to renew your certification. The initial process will not change, but the renewals are going to become more streamlined, and they're going to look more like other things that we're already familiar with in the Microsoft environment. Corey has a great question in the chat. Does anyone have opinions on the LinkedIn skills assessments? Has anyone done the Power BI one? Okay, and with that, I'm going to jump in. Priscilla and all, thank you so much for having me. And you guys feel free to stay on and chat. I need to jump off and run to another meeting, but this has been really wonderful. If you want to connect with me, you can find me on LinkedIn. My profile is Shannon R. Lindsay on LinkedIn, and I'm on Twitter at ShanGSD. And I want to say thank you so much to everyone for taking time out of your day to learn about this. I am always nervous that I feel like certifications is not the most thrilling topic to talk about. I don't have any demos, but you guys made this really fun. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Shannon. That was great. Thank you so much.
If my computer will let me exit.
All right, I'm going
try.
to switch over now and I will let you go. Let me take over. Oops.
Thanks, everybody. Have a good afternoon or
Bye-bye.
evening.
Okay. All right, let me just share my screen. Does anyone have any other questions they want to ask before we end it? Because I know it's getting close to 1 o'clock. No? I think then that is it. Okay, well, thank you everyone so much for attending. I'm going to place this recording on my YouTube channel, which is IT Data Diva, and you can find it there. And I hope everyone has a great day. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Thanks, Priscilla. Bye.
Oh, I see one quick question. When is the next user group meeting? I try to have one every month, so I'm gonna try next month to have one. There is, for the ladies, a Power BI Women user group. I think it's the town hall is going on tomorrow if you want to join that. Okay, take care. Bye-bye.